afternoon, at least it's afternoon here in LA. It's a beautiful winter's day. We are a little chilly, but thank you for the response and the conversation around Nehemiah and rebuilding. I really am incredibly excited. Is there like an inner breathlessness, a sense of anticipation? It's a bit like going out before a rugby game and you kind of feel your adrenals are going and there's excitement and the game's on and it's going to be a tough one, but that's kind of why you've been training. That same sense of anticipation of this adventure that lies before us. So welcome, this is the fourth in our series, and we're looking at the whole idea of rebuilding as we see it in the text. The text is such a beautiful set of guardrails as we bounce our way forward, trying to hear the voice of God, trying to apply the text, trying to make sense of our socio-cultural context. And this afternoon I want to dive in to this little passage. It is Nehemiah and it's chapter 2. And it said, I went to Jerusalem. Now remember, Nehemiah was a wine bearer. He was the one who gave the king his wine. And he is now in a completely different role. What Zerubbabel wasn't able to achieve, what Ezra wasn't able to achieve, God sends kind of the third wave of leadership. And it says, after staying there a few days, that's Nehemiah in Jerusalem, Nehemiah says, I set out during the night with a few others, a few trusted buddies. And I had not told anyone what my God had put in my heart to do for Jerusalem. There were no mounts with me except the one I was riding on. By night, I went out through the valley gate toward the jackal gate and the dung gate, examining or inspecting the walls of Jerusalem, which had been broken down and its gates had been destroyed by fire. Then I moved on towards the fountain gate and the king's pool, but there was not enough room for my mount to get through. So I went up the valley by night, examining or inspecting the wall. Finally, I turned back and re-entered through the valley gate. The officials did not know where I'd gone or what I was doing, because I had as yet said nothing to the Jews or the priests or the nobles or the officials or any others who would be doing the work. And there is this intriguing evolution in the life of Nehemiah. Nehemiah was schooled and groomed for the temple courts. He was not at all, at least from our knowledge of him, an architect or a builder. He had no knowledge in the graphics of taking and rebuilding a city up from some measure of brokenness. And I think what God so often does is he plays us out of position. We feel like we've been schooled and groomed in a particular way. I mean, you think of Paul for a moment. Wouldn't he have been the superb guy to be an apostle to the Jews? I mean, he studied under Gamaliel. He knew the culture. He was a Pharisee of Pharisees. And God says, Paul, I've got the gig for you. I need you to go and be an apostle to the Gentiles. God so often plays us in a position contrary to the one we used to. Maybe because our mindset gets stuck. Maybe because we get used to it and we don't grow anymore. Meryl and I were talking this morning about neuroscience and a podcast she listened to about a neuroscientist who says the moment we artists or athletes become proficient in their gift, they actually stop growing, because now they're living out of instinct and the endless repetition that they just respond to now. And it's when they do something completely different that the mind gets working again. And as I was reading through this passage again this afternoon, prepping for this time, I was reminded of how God chose this wine guy, the sommelier, to become the architect builder of the New Jerusalem. The Old Covenant doesn't have language for apostles, but what we do see here is an apostle, really. We see one who knows how to build. There's so much conversation around apostles today, and kind of every man and his dog, if you excuse the expression, wants to be an apostle, as if somehow it's the creme de la creme, the elite. It's not really. It's the one who wants to get his hands dirty. It's the one who wants to get into the trenches. Here Nehemiah goes at night where there's no recognition, no applause, no celebrityism, no $3,000 sneakers. His mount can't even get through. But that's exactly where he needs to be and where he wants to go. Foundations are beautiful things. I think we can underscore their value. Paul, writing to the Corinthians He says this, by the grace God has given me, I laid a foundation as a wise builder. Someone else is building on it, but each one should build with care. For no one can lay any foundation other than the one already laid, which is Christ Jesus. And I just want to walk us through very basically. There are 4 times we lay foundations in our communities. The first is when we plant it or start out, and we've got to dig those trenches, and we've got to go deeper than we go up initially. That's how it works. Secondly, we have those foundations laid when God is going to give us increased influence. For whatever His reason and His kind of sovereign choice, He wants to increase our profile, and then we've got to go down in order to go up. It makes architectural sense. Thirdly, is when I wanted to build an extra room onto this house, then I would need to lay the foundation that can cope with it. So if a community goes through enlargement, there's sudden growth, 50, 70, 100, 200 people suddenly get added, you've got to say, whoa, what are the foundations, and are they laid well enough to make sure we can cope with that growth? But fourthly, when we plant, when there's increased influence, when there's enlargement, but fourthly, when there's a calamity, moral failure, as we saw with Hillsong New York, when there is some kind of hurricane or cyclone in the natural, something that hit a community like the pandemic. None of us knew the pandemic was coming. None of us saw it coming. None of us had time to kind of wrap the tent around our building. It just hit us, and it hit us hard, and we had to pivot quickly, and we didn't even know, in fact, many don't even know now how well their churches really are doing. What does Nehemiah do here? The visual I have is of him with his flashlight, and he's going at night, and he's looking, he's examining, he's scrutinizing. What is the condition here? What has gone bad? Where are the cracks? Where have the walls crumbled under the pressure of a foe that has destroyed them? And I think, my dear friends, it's a fabulous time for us to go back and ask these 4 questions. Jesus is our foundation, our cornerstone, our strong tower that we run to. Number 1 in theology. How has theology crumbled and cracked at this time? People have walked away from the Lord. People have doubted God. People have lost faith in God. People have stopped reading their Bibles. I mean, this is a really hard, honest conversation we need to have about ourselves and our communities. How have we done? Second base is missiology. A healthy church is a community on mission, a Jesus-centered community on mission. Missiology is what God has called us to do. It's not enough to know good theology. It's not enough to build good community. We have to wrap all of that together with a strong sense of mission. We are still called to mission. Genesis Church, we are still called to be with the homeless and the elderly here in Costa Mesa. We're still called to care for those who are broken and those who are fractured by the pressure that we are under. And then there is global church planting. I'm so proud of Saj going to plant in Sri Lanka. I'm so proud of David and Katie down in Nicaragua. I'm so proud, and some I can't mention because it's sensitive, but Garrison and Meredith in Pasadena. I'm so proud of these people who in a pandemic, Jeff and Jane planting in Lisbon, Portugal, because the gospel to the 4 corners of the globe is still our great assignment. First base is our theology. Second base is our mission. Third base is our ecclesiology. We are all going through an architectural evolution. It hasn't stopped yet. Don't dash back to Sunday meetings, business as usual. God is still revamping our understanding of what biblical ecclesiology is really like. And then lastly, leadership. That is the home base that allows us to do what needs to be done. In the session that follows, I'm going to talk a little bit more about leadership, but our foundations need to be honestly, vulnerably, and deeply evaluated. How have we coped with the hurricane of the pandemic? Our future depends on it. Thanks so much for watching. We so appreciate you jumping on. God bless you.